do this. Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for, oh my God, February's RIDWG meeting. Today, I can't remember if I put this in the email last week that I sent out, but we do have a presenter. If you notice, Jonah is on the call with us. And so I asked Jonah, we've talked about Jonah before in some past meetings. He does some small scale development just up the river from you all in Bellows Falls. And, you know, I think part of this group's mission is to really, you know, just stay informed and educated and, you know, learn about cool things happening around small scale development. And so I thought Jonah could be a good presenter in that realm. So Jonah, we'll hand it over to you. 15 minutes, is that too much, enough, not enough?
Yeah, it's probably good. I mean, I figured what I do, I can give a little intro and background on myself, and then I have it's a pitch deck that I put together for investors and the bank for a project I'm working on up in Fairleigh that we just broke ground on a couple of weeks ago that I can walk through.
Great. And then we can do questions, and then you're obviously welcome to stay on, but I'm sure you're very busy, so we won't be offended if you need to hop off. So I'm going to, would it be helpful for you, Jonah, to have everyone introduce themselves, just to sort of know like where they're coming from on the development spectrum, if you will?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I am also curious, from my understanding, this group was formed coming out of some sessions with the Incremental Development Alliance, which I follow pretty closely. Never gone through a program with them, but yeah, it's very intrigued by how this group, the response to that you know, that series of events that you guys held down in Brattleboro. So yeah, that quick intros would be great.
Great. Yep. So we did hire Incremental Development to do some TA with the town of Rockingham, and this group sort of grew out of the people that showed up to those trainings and info sessions and felt there was sort of an interest in, you know, bringing this, you know, into the future, or, you know, having this continue after IncDev left after their contract ends. So Gary, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, hi, Gary Fox, Development Director for Rockingham.
Jeff
Dunbar. I did go through the IncDev classes, and it's great. I hope to do more. And Jonah, I've been following your 321 newsletter and what you've been.
Great.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you're inspiring, and I wish I was your age and starting out. But
have you developed any projects, or are you? Is it like you're considering?
I grew up in Bellows Falls, moved away, came back. I'm a trustee in the town. I work in the weatherization industry. I have a twin brother, and he and I have been purchasing multifamilies, and I guess we're 14 units. So we're that's sort of our. After this, I'll be going and sanding some sheetrock. So it's what I do in my spare time. So
the classic after hours hobby.
It's my retirement plan. Yeah. So no, it's great stuff that you're doing, and I hope to meet you at some point and look forward to your presentation today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. Sue?
Hi, yes, I am the community development lead here at the Wyndham Regional Commission, and I've been working with Bellows Falls and Gary on a number of different initiatives, including brownfields redevelopment and the island area. I also have been through some of the Incremental Development Alliance programs previously when I was at the Connecticut Main Street Center, so I have kind of a long history following them.
Great, nice to meet you, Sue.
Nice to meet you.
Sue was the reason that IncDev, that we started looking into bringing them. I had not heard of them before, and Sue mentioned it, and that sort of sparked the beginning of the process. So
okay,
you get partial credit, Sue. Emmett.
Hi, yeah, I'm the president of the Bellows Falls Downtown Development Alliance, and we're the quasi-governmental agency that's connected with the village designation and tax credits that come from that. So we work with the merchants and the landlords and the community at large to bring a greater awareness and economic activity and provide some, I don't know, it's probably been maybe $7 million over the years of tax credits for, working with the historic buildings, that program that functions throughout the state. Yeah, so.
Thanks, Emmett.
Awesome.
Robert?
Yep, I'm Robert McBride. I've been in Bellows Falls full-time since about 1995 and started an organization back there called the Rockingham Arts and Museum Project to help revitalize the downtown community. Worked with our statewide housing organizations to take a derelict building and make it affordable housing with a preference given to artists that opened in 2000. So I'm also became a landlord over a period of time, purchased properties and, have about 12 tenants, currently about 5 different properties and stuff. So my focus has been on developing things with the arts and in the downtown.
That's awesome. I might have some follow-up questions for you after this.
Great.
Very, very intrigued by that.
Thanks, Robert. Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Moderano. I'm with the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. I'm the multifamily rental program, rehab program coordinator. And one of the programs that I coordinate is focused in Rockingham. And so I got involved with this group and they're so interesting. I just continue to come. So.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Paul.
Same.
Dwayne?
Hi, I'm Dwayne Case. I'm a resident of Bellows Falls. And since moving here about 4 years ago, I've just been finding more than enough work as a general renovation repair contractor. I get my hands into almost everything. I've been really interested in a lot of the ideas and thoughts that RIDWG has been, and incremental development has been working on before then. I started getting interested in the town's things about 2 years ago when the Vermont Council on Rural Development did a big program here. And out of that, we had a task force that was supposed to be redeveloping historic buildings. But my interest in that kind of work goes back really decades. I was just looking at my shelf the other day. I've got a couple of books that I bought back in 1980, 1982 time on that subject and so forth. So now that I've finally thrown the anchor in the ground, I've been interested in seeing what I can do to promote some of these ideas and to try to make our community and the planet a little bit more resilient and environment friendly.
Awesome. It's a great time to be a GC.
It's too great. Sorry about my video. I don't know why it's working today.
That's okay.
Today. I haven't been able to troubleshoot that, so I'm going to give up.
No problem, Dwayne. Thanks. Tony?
I'm Tony Elliott. I live in Westminster, but I've done a lot of things in Bellows Falls. I'm a part owner with Pat and Alan Fowler and some others of the Wyndham Hotel. I've got a couple of other properties in town, some under development and some not. And I've run Woodstone Company since 1978. I started Sovereignnet. I started Will Radio. I'm a big fan of Bellows Falls coming along. And I think, Jonah, you and I communicated 6 months ago, or when you showed up on a Zoom at one point. But I'm really interested in what you're doing and admired it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tony. Last but not least, Pat, I'm sure you've caught on. We're just introducing ourselves to Jonah before he presents. Make sure you unmute yourself. like you're on an iPad. Let's see. Uh-oh. Pat, can you maybe type it into the chat if you can't find the,
There we go.
There you go. Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I'm at the bookstore and can't seem to get in from Alan's iMac upstairs. Anyways, I'm owner of Village Square Booksellers and part owner of the Wyndham Hotel. I'm on the downtown Bellows Falls Downtown Alliance Board and several other boards. And I live just 2 blocks away in the village, so I'm always hoping to keep things moving here. So it's good to have somebody looking at the housing situation. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks,
Nice to meet
Pat.
you, Pat.
Man, I know this is a cool group, but like hearing everyone introduce themselves, just, I don't know, you guys are great. Everyone's great. All right, Jonah, let me make you co-host so that you can share your screen and take it away.
Sweet. So thanks for having me, guys. My name's Jonah Richard. A little background. I grew up in Fairleigh, right on the Connecticut River, just north of you guys. I went to high school up here. Ended up moving down to New York City to go to college. Studied engineering. Stuck around there for must have been 5 years. Had a job working in management consulting. Essentially, we would contract with tech companies to help make their operations more efficient. Fast forward a couple years, I got started investing in real estate on the side in New Jersey. Just buying, small duplexes, 3plexes, started with turnkey rentals, slowly moved over to projects that needed more and more TLC, and did that for a couple years. That was in Newark, New Jersey. And kind of around that time, I realized, long story short, I thought I could, pursue this full time. Wanted to get more into the development side. Wanted to do it in a place that, I actually, I loved and cared about, and actually rather than just have it be numbers on a spreadsheet or return on investment or, just for the sake of making money and having a retirement nest egg. Want to actually make an impact, drive downtown revitalization, and actually see some place start to come alive that, or at least help a place come alive that potentially had been sitting vacant for a while. And so I turned my eyes to Fairleigh, which I don't know if anybody is familiar with the area, but it's a small town, probably 4,000, 1,500 residents. Used to have quite a bit of activity along Main Street. In 2007, 2008, there's a big fire that took down one of the big landmark multifamily mixed use buildings right there on Main Street. It was a seven retail spaces, probably another 7 apartments, 2-story, beautiful building, completely wiped it out, and has that plot of land had been, sitting vacant since. That kind of caused a little bit of a downward spiral in my mind. All the surrounding properties retail spaces slowly vacated. The gas station next door went under. There was a regional bank that went away. Multiple other small retail, entrepreneurs had to shutter their shops just because they couldn't sustain themselves. And so, having grown up in that town, my family's there, I thought there's no shortage of what I guess I'm calling social capital, but there's a massive community, a lot of firepower within the community. There's not a lot of investment capital happening. Not a lot of people taking on the projects that need to get developed, such as housing, mixed use buildings, commercial space, etc. And so there was this old vacant commercial space. Sorry, give me 1 second. There was this commercial space, old bank building that had been sitting vacant for 5 years. I ended up making an offer on it, purchasing it without really knowing what I wanted to do with the space, but knew that I could develop something really impactful, multifamily, specifically multifamily mixed use. So retail on the ground floor, 2 stories of apartments up top. So that's the project that kind of got me kickstarted up in the area. I have a couple others that I'm working on in the planning phases in and around Fairleigh, so Fairleigh and Bradford primarily. But this bank building project is my main focus now, and this is kind of the project that I'd like to walk you guys through right now. So let me pull up my screen. Can you guys see this?
Looks good.
Okay. So this is a drone shot of Fairleigh Main Street. Highlighted in green here is the old bank building, that single-story commercial space. So right across the street, that mixed-use building that burned down over a decade ago, that's this parking lot here with a little coffee hut that some folks put up this summer. We have a vacant gas station across the street that's currently under contract. Some folks are looking at putting in a wood-fired pizzeria there. There's this new burger, like really cool burger space that just opened up a couple blocks down, and a bike store. So like there's a lot of activity coming to town, and a lot of new, entrepreneurs, I would say relatively younger, in their 30s and 40s, that are taking the leap and starting to renovate old spaces one by one. So it's very, collectively, I think we have a shot at doing something really impactful here. So to put in perspective, this was, I'd done renovations in the past. So the biggest renovation I'd done prior to this was $100,000, $120,000 gut renovation of a 3-unit, 3-story residential triplex, but never any ground up construction. So this is, to put in perspective, this would be my, first time actually developing something from the bottom up. And so convincing equity investors and convincing lenders, your conventional banks, lenders, to actually lend and invest on a new construction project where the developer has little to no experience is very difficult. And so this package, call it a pitch deck, it was my way of kind of showing that I've thought this through thoroughly, and that I have, the ability to take it through to completion. So I'll skim over the first parts, but this is basically an overview to give investors, to give the bank a sense of, what is Fairleigh. The synopsis is here that, there's demand for housing, but there's no supply. There's 1 to 2 single family houses in the market at any one time. There's 0 rentals on the market. And again, those single family houses that are for sale are extremely expensive. I mean, that's kind of a common thread throughout the state. So a couple, demographic stats here that I pulled in. A big one, which you may be familiar with, is this Keys to the Valley report that came out in 2021 that essentially says, came to the conclusion that 10,000 new rental units are needed in the Upper Valley, which is our region of 30 to 40 towns split across Vermont and New Hampshire. So 10,000 new units are needed by 2030. Just based on, the demand. There's, we have big employers, the Dartmouth Medical Center in Hanover. We got Dartmouth College, University as well in Hanover. There's a big biotech presence across the river, and these places just have nowhere to house folks. And so, I called out some of this activity that's happening along Main Street. You'll see on the northern end, 501 Main is the project that I'm focused on here. There is, Chapman's General Store right next door. There's this Chapman's Place, event venue that was established last year, a burger place, bike shop, like I mentioned. And then this is the building. So this is in all its glory. Vinyl siding originally built in the 1930s, then expanded in the 1960s. Basically, in its heyday was a bank, and then since early 2010s has been, cycled through a number of hair salons. There was a barber shop. It was used as office space, but nobody, held it for any long duration or period of time. So the idea being here, we'll take the building down to its foundation and then build up. There's not much that can be salvaged in the way of existing structure. It's all 2x4 construction. No insulation. It just needs to be completely redone. So this is a little bit of the history, just to share kind of the background of the project. So built as a post office in the 30s, then expanded in the 60s to accommodate that bank that I mentioned. And then, since then has been a variety of different tenants. So I put together, as I started to think through this, as a new developer on my own, I don't have many credentials to show except for the past renovation projects that I've taken on myself. So I thought it was important to really pull together a core team as we went into this. And so being a commercial project, we have a pretty big design team. This has actually since grown since I built this pitch deck probably 6 months ago now. So we have, two architects that work hand in hand. We have a fire suppression engineer. We have a structural engineer, a mechanical engineer. And now I had to have a civil engineer and a septic engineer as well, because there is town water. There's no municipal sewer system. So we have to figure out a way to put a septic that can accommodate 9 units on our small half-acre lot. And then I really wanted to align on, who's actually building this, thing. So I pitched the idea to the bank that I would be the general contractor, again, based on my somewhat tenuous experience doing renovations down in New Jersey, but having a really experienced team under me that could manage the frame to finish, the building, building performance, insulation, the HVAC, the electrical. All these guys have years and years, if not decades, of experience. But I thought it was important for me to more so from a personal standpoint, take ownership of the project. And also it helped me mitigate a little bit of the risk if I could, be the day-to-day lead overseeing everything. And then I have a property manager up here that manages some of my other rentals that would come on day one to do the lease up. So this is like a initial preliminary rendering of what the building is to look like. Couple things to note here. So, we're going up 3 stories, first floor, half of it being retail, and then a number of apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and then the back half of the 1st floor. Renderings get extremely expensive, as I'm sure you guys know. So there's this fine line of how do you communicate the idea effectively to the community without going overboard on your architectural and design budget. And so this is kind of the compromise that I ended up making. The siding, the siding will ultimately be, we're going to do board and batten, metal, your metal siding, standing seam siding, we're actually going to do a parapet on the roof. There was a long a long process we went through the town to get the entitlements complete. I think with good intentions, they had established what is called a form-based, I'm sure many of you know, form-based code for how buildings in the village center should look and feel. But it's not very robust. There's like, they had a couple pictures in the zoning bylaws, a couple sketches, 2D sketches of what they would like to see developed just in terms of basically in terms of roof lines. Shed roofs were not on that list. Despite the fact that, we and my architects thought we could do something aesthetically pleasing that had a shed roof. It wasn't part of their original form-based code design that they did a couple years ago. And so that got nixed after a couple months of back and forth with the development review board. So ultimately what we came back with is a design that has, a little more traditional, has a parapet on 3 sides. It's still effectively a shed roof in the sense that, there's one pitch. It's a 112 pitch roof from front to back. It's just hidden from the curb, right? So you'd be able to see an architecturally relevant parapet that's in line with other older developments on Main Street. So for unit makeup here, a big thing that this came down to was build costs and trying to be as transparent as possible with how rental rates are going to be a function of how much it costs to construct this thing. And so the only way that we could effectively keep rents relatively low was to build smaller units naturally. So we're looking at mainly studios here with a couple 1-bedrooms. Each of these studios, roughly on average will be 450 square feet per apartment, which is definitely small for Vermont, even smaller for probably a rural town like Fairleigh. But I feel more comfortable going into this with smaller apartments, having lived in a series of 300, 350, 400 square foot apartments in New York City for a number of years. It's most definitely doable. And if you design the units right, it can be done tastefully. And I think it's just a matter of how we having to nail down the interior design to make everything fit and work. But if we wanted, if one of the main goals here is to make this affordable, and again, when we talk about affordable here, we're largely unsubsidized. I'll get to the capital stack in a second, but we're focusing on folks that are making 90 to 100% of the area median income. So it's not, ideally we could get that lower. And if we can, if construction costs come in lower than what we're anticipating, which I doubt they will, but if we can get, if we can take some sort of efficiency measures and cut that cost down, that will be directly translated onto tenants. So the retail space is interesting. I originally wanted to do a gallery on one side, so small, it's 250 to 300 square foot gallery that could be used in collaboration. So Chapman's General Store, which is adjacent to this building, has a component of artisanal goods. They source handmade goods from local artisans and sell them in their space. This would be an extension. This would have been an extension of that if this is the final design that we went with. Then that's slightly changed since we originally published this deck. But the original idea was to do a gallery space and then a live work studio. I was always very intrigued by the thought of enabling someone to live in the back apartment and then have a retail space up front to present and sell their wares on a Main Street setting. However, that said, we ultimately ended up, when we got into discussions with the building inspector / fire marshal about the commercial code requirements for retail space, we ultimately had to combine the 2 retail spaces into one. It comes down to technicalities for how we how we were designing the ADA accessible bathrooms. We didn't have enough space to do 2 ADA bathrooms. We ended up combining the retail space into one. So now we have one larger gallery space, larger in quotes, because it's still only 400 square feet. But that will be used for, for the presentation and sale of artisanal goods. So these are second and third floor plans. We have balconies in each apartment, dedicated about 75 square feet each. I ended up showing some of the benefits of a development like this. Like what would this actually bring to the community? I think this is very important for the lender and also investors to see. But we're bringing much needed housing. We're reducing vacancy along Main Street. There's all these eyesores, vacant commercial buildings that we'll be revitalizing, creating opportunity for local businesses, beautifying downtown. We're really focused on energy efficiency here. So going above and beyond state energy code, both in terms of, insulation, thermal barriers, as well as the mechanical system. So we'll be going fully electric, ductless mini split heat pumps for heating and AC. We'll be going with high efficiency hot water heaters, doing heat pump washer or dryers in each unit. So really focused on moving away from fossil fuels and getting driving efficiency for residents. And then lastly is building this repeatable model that can be scaled and implemented elsewhere. And so I'll skim ahead. I'll skim over these financials. I'm happy to share this deck if anybody wants to look at them, but being very transparent with how these numbers play out. So this is the rent roll. Here we have comparative rents in the area. The pro forma is very important for financing. Obviously, banks are going to want to see that this is a profitable asset from their point of view. And so we need to take everything into account here. And then the budget. So the budget gets a little interesting. I think I've been through 3 or 4 rounds of pricing prior to actually starting breaking ground last week. This was the second version of that. It's since been blown out of the water. I mean, we're looking now at $1 million just in construction costs. That's outside of holding costs, so your bank financing debt, outside of your insurance and property tax payments during construction, outside of acquisition costs. So looking at $1 million construction budget right now. So capital sources and uses. It's not this. If we had wanted to go, we were going to have trouble making the numbers work if we did your standard, construction loan with your, conventional bank plus private investment or equity. We needed some sort of grants or extra financing to help us make this more of a financially feasible project. And so we were fortunate to be able to secure roughly $80,000 state tax credit. So for downtown, so the Vermont's downtown revitalization tax credit grant, which immensely helps with bringing down those costs. And we're also able to work with Efficiency Vermont, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, to get another little chunk of incentive based on our energy exceeding energy code, high performance building. So you can see how the uses are broken down. Construction costs have gone up, as I mentioned, but had a purchase price of $100,000 with some closing costs. We have holding costs, which get really can get really expensive the longer your construction goes on. So each month that you have that you go over your timeline, you're still paying the bank their interest-only payments. You're still paying your property taxes, your insurance, your electricity bills. So you need to be very careful going in that you have a realistic timeline and you're budgeting for those expenses. Skim over that. And then this is kind of our tentative timeline that we came up with. Again, this is 6 months ago. It's since been revised a little bit. We're now almost done demolition. We started a couple weeks ago. The excavator's coming in a couple days. So we'll be able to take the building down to the foundation and get ready to actually start building in a few weeks. But yeah, ultimately we're looking at, call it a 10-month timeline with 2 months of buffer, 2 to 3 months of buffer for lease up, and in case things get extended beyond our control. So that's the end of this presentation. I guess I'll pause there. I know I talked for more than 15 minutes, but happy to answer any questions if you guys have them.
Thanks, Jonah. Yeah, open floor. Questions, comments, thoughts? Tony?
I'm just curious what kind of security your bank is requiring of you. Are you signing personally on loans and so on and so forth? Are you the individual owner, or do you have some partners in the ownership?
Yeah, so we have partners. There's 5 of us, so it's me plus 4. I call them passive equity investors. The debt is full recourse. I had to sign my name, on the dotted line, personal guarantee. But that said, was able to keep the investors off of the debt, and also, because it's a commercial loan, the bank is a little more willing to underwrite the project based on the projected rents and income of the asset itself versus the financials of the sponsor. So I'm very fortunate because I no longer have a W-2 job, having left consulting in New York. So it's very difficult to qualify for loans sometimes.
Right. No, it looks like a good plan, though. It looks like it pans out very nicely. I'm impressed.
Thanks, Tony. Sue?
Yeah, I don't know if I missed this, but did you mention what kind of rent you're expecting?
So initially we're targeting right now is $1,250, $1,200 to $1,250 a month. For the retail space, I'm kind of treating that as a loss leader. Retail rents are extremely low,
Right.
and I'd rather get somebody really good business in there, local business, and have them pay. I mean, I think I have in there $300 a month or $400 a month in rent for the retail space, and I think that that's going to be a driving factor to for helping revitalize Main Street.
Thanks.
Robert?
Yeah, no, admirable. I applaud you. I applaud you, Jonah. But so how is the
Thanks.
momentum built about, how's the community getting behind what you're doing? Are they picking up on your investment and your enthusiasm? Are there I don't know, are there any naysayers that think that the project shouldn't move forward for some reason? I mean, I can't imagine why, but once again, we're in Vermont, and everyone has all kinds of opinions.
Yeah, it's actually been really heartwarming to see the amount of support come out from the community, both the community and the town leadership side. So I presented this multiple times in public forums to the town. It was extremely well received. I will say I did have some trouble with a couple folks on the development review board. It seemed to be an isolated case, but they were very restrictive with their interpretation of the zoning bylaws. And so, there's a lot of leeway that development review boards have with how they interpret. For one reason or another, they were, they're very strict with their interpretations. That caused a couple issues getting through entitlements. But, the community is actually exactly opposite what I expected. Like usually you hear about, community meetings with local development, folks getting up and kind of expressing how they, would want to see all these changes, or they don't want to see this type of development play out. But in fact, I actually had multiple people stand up in favor during the meetings, and no naysayers from the community.
Great. And how much do you think, having been from the community yourself, even though you moved away and it's come back, has been an aid to you as not really an outsider?
Yeah, infinitely. I mean, there's a story. There's a guy that tried to come and develop the property across the street 5-6 years ago and got completely shut down by the town. I think a lot of it's about perception, about who, developers have bad reputations in general. So it's are you living up to that standard, or are you actually doing something? Like, do you actually care about the community? Are you doing something to make a difference versus just a profit? And so folks will very quickly sniff that out and call you on it if you have the wrong intentions.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your project.
Of course.
Actually, I was curious, actually, when you mentioned the sewer, it doesn't have sewage, town sewer. And how did you get over that issue of only having a half an acre and 9 units going in, like the fixture units going into a septic system? What did you guys end up installing for that?
Yeah, so we ended up having to do initially we were targeting a pre-treatment system, which is a little more expensive and complicated, but allows you to cut the size of the septic system in half. We ultimately found, there's a play between, building size, septic, and then parking spaces for any development in small towns, right? And so parking, we had a really deep discussion with the town about parking. We originally, based on the zoning bylaws, we thought we needed something like 24 parking spots, or it was something absurd for the amount of units in bedrooms they were putting in. So we got a little leeway on how many parking spaces, and I think we cut that down to 18. And so by cutting it down to 18, that freed up a little more space so we could forego the pre-treatment and just do a standard septic system just behind the property. We're also fortunate in town, the soil just happens to be really good for septic systems. And so, there's some factor depending on the soil. Like if it's terrible soil, then you have to have 2 times the size for the leach field. Like we actually have the best soil possible out back. So that was another boon for us.
Cool, thanks.
Dwayne, let's have Dwayne just be the last question, so we do have some time to talk about other stuff. And I'm sure, Jonah, you'd be happy if people reached out via email. Yeah, great. Dwayne?
Thanks so much, Jonah. It was a great presentation. My question is about the team, and how do you find the architects, the engineers, the contractors, and so forth, get them on board, get them willing to believe that it's worth their time and energy to work with you, and pay them for all the months before there's actually an approval on the table?
Yeah, that is a really tricky part that a lot of people overlook. So the first step is getting the architects and the design team on board. It was hard. It was hard to get architects to give me a call back. I ultimately was able to vet and talk to a couple based on connections that I had in the area. So I know general contractors. I know my dad ended up being a friend with the architect that I worked with, and so it was difficult at first because a lot of people are looking at your credentials and they're saying, well, why am I going to invest all this time up front and not know that the developer, can actually deliver on your promises? But it's, again, like this pitch deck, being able to communicate your vision for the property is a big leg up. And then as far as financing in the beginning, you know, that's all capital that comes out of came out of my pocket. So I'm taking a risk by putting, you know, going through the initial design phases, getting a site plan developed to put in front of the town, getting initial concepts, you know, renderings put together to get community buy-in. But all that comes before a lender will actually commit to financing. So that, I mean, that's just a risk, I think, of development in one way or another. You're going to have to, someone's going to have to put out the initial capital to finance the upfront work.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, Jonah, thank you so much for taking time today. I put Jonah's email and his link to his newsletter if anyone is interested. And Jonah and I were talking a little bit over email. I had the idea that it would be cool to go up and see the project in person. You know, I think the timing was a little bit off, but I think, Jonah, you said you're open to showing people the project, and you know, maybe we can, if you're still open to that, we can gather some people who are interested in that and figure out a time, you know, to come up and see it.
Yeah, I would love to show anybody that's interested. You know, we're there most days now, but if you give me a little heads up, I can actually, you know, we can schedule something, and happy to give a tour, and we can, yeah, show you around. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So it's 4:22. We got about a half hour or so. I believe I gotta pull up the, you know, somewhat of an agenda that I put together. I think so. I was having some emailing back and forth with a few people in this group about, you know, what's next. I know back in December we sort of had that discussion, and I think, you know, for this group, I'm happy to provide sort of the organization and the staffing and whatnot, but the drive and sort of the forward momentum really has to be driven by you all, because, you know, you live there, you work there, and I want to see Bellows Falls succeed, but I really feel like will be most successful with sort of the energy from the people in this group. So, you know, I think true to incremental, I think it's really important for this group to figure out some kind of incremental next step to show momentum, to show energy, to show movement, and you know, sort of move forward, whether that's an actual physical project or something else. But I think having sort of a forward momentum is going to be really important for this group to sort of stay motivated and have people continue to show up month to month. So that's what I just put in the chat was, I think, what I had sent out in the invite email. But these are some ideas about sort of like what are the next steps, what are some ideas for the next steps that this group could take. I think John sent me another one by email that I will also put in. But yeah, I just want to open the floor and see what people are thinking. Feel free to speak.
Well, I'll start in.
Great.
No. I mean, I think it's always very difficult with a volunteer group to expect too much in a way. I mean, I think the group of people we've gathered and meeting over the last year is a really good foundation and a variety of people. I'm thrilled that Windham Regional Commission and Windham Windsor Housing and, you know, the town obviously is supportive of this, and Gary, you know, so I mean, I think we have really some good key leveraging organizations involved with us. And I don't personally feel like we need to come up with a project to initiate, in a very bricks and mortar way. I mean, if something happened that way, great. I think we can play a very strong supportive role as a volunteer community group, supporting, for instance, the grants the town may be moving forward with, or ideas they want to hear that's kind of overlap with kind of where the development's coming from the program that, started this group. But I don't think like, oh my God, we have to go out and make carriage houses happen. That's something that's out there, and that's something that's happened in different communities. I think we should look at what's already going on in our community and support those initiatives, and that energy will build around that mostly. And I think we'll feel more successful by being supportive of those initiatives. Like if Gary gives us an update on some of the grant things they're working at, and he sees an overlap with this group, or a support letter that would come from this group, or some energy maybe the group would be involved in, or the same thing with Wyndham, Wyndham Windsor Housing, or with Wyndham Regional Commission, those kinds of things. I think, I did reach out to Chris Proctor recently. I sent an email because he's the guy that wanted to develop those two houses at 36 and 38. 34 and 36 Old Terrace. I just sent him an email saying, how's it going? Is it on the radar screen still? I haven't heard back from him. There's the people that, the brothers that did the Hetty Green Motel, they are doing it. They're like Jonas, they're doing it. So I think we should support the people that are kind of doing it and make them more aware of us and the support we can give them.
Tony?
I just wanted to respond to your Hetty Green Motel group. I think they're here for the long haul. It sounds like when they finish up there, they've got other ideas to move ahead with. I hear that Cheever Tire, he may retire, and that's what he does, is retire. But sorry, when he so when he does, that would be an obvious pickup for those guys. I also think that Bellows Falls Area Development Corp has synergy with this group, and we've been taking on some fairly large projects, multi-million-dollar brownfields and things like that. But I think that's what we're set up to do. So where there are obstacles for a property, BFADC can get involved and bring in grants and money that really can help get a project ready to roll. And Gary will probably mention some of this, but the town is thinking of a lot of projects down over the hill, and historic properties under redevelopment, that sort of thing. So there are a lot of opportunities kind of queued up, and I think that's pretty exciting. So.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, I think that, there is a lot of good energy that has started to bubble up, and getting that harnessed together with the various groups, I think, is where our power really lies, and having diluted efforts isn't going to serve us. But if we can get various groups together, looking at the Oswego site, that was inspiring as far as what can happen as far as momentum and getting community-wide energy going for a space. And I think Bellows Falls is on the verge of that. And I guess I'm hopeful and optimistic, and I don't think there's one of us that thinks that we can make that happen alone. So I'm hoping that the various groups do get together and make that happen. Let me see. The other thing I noticed in Oswego was the Porch Fest. I don't know if people saw the sign for that or are familiar with the Porch Fest, but you know, Bellows Falls just has so many of these Victorian porches, and then you look at the number of houses that have lost the porches. I think that everything you read about, you know, communities in this day and age, you know, the loss of people using their porches have a lot to do with people's lack of social interaction. If I think the Porch Fest could really be a fun event for Bellows Falls, you know, whether it becomes, you know, BF, you know, various groups coming together and doing that, and having musicians on porches, having food trucks, getting organizations together. And if you know, RIDWG is the one that, and it's a great opportunity to let people know what the various organizations are and what our efforts are and why we're doing it. And I think we have so much talent locally here that I think we could get a half dozen people. I started writing down names, and you know, 4 right off the bat of people that I know would be willing, and I bet there's another 8 available, you know, so.
Jeff, I don't know if you remember, but I used to run the Front Porch Music Summer Entertainment Series. So I did it for about 8 years, 8 to 10 years, I can't remember. And then we also had a Front Porch Art Walk. So that was through the Our Town group.
Yeah.
I've gone to events like that back in Cleveland, and they are a cool way to you know, walk around a neighborhood that maybe you don't live in, you know, but you pass by in your car all the time. And I wonder if something like that could be used to like raise money to help the houses that don't have porches or bygone porches that are no longer usable, like help
Yeah, and I
them
think
fix it up.
get people into some of the back streets where people aren't going to really recognize,
Yeah.
you know, when I go out and walk, I try to go to some place that I just don't normally travel.
Well,
Yeah.
the Our Town group did a garden tour, and they did a house tour. So those were fundraisers for Our Town that Kathy Bergman and Dot Reed and Marge Ladd and myself were involved in back in the day. So there definitely is a demand for things like that. It is hard for the homeowners, especially in these COVID times, perhaps just looking at either porch things or garden things, because everybody has been working on their gardens more. Like Robert's garden is absolutely gorgeous all the time. But
Especially now.
yeah, well, well, we didn't, you came in after we were doing these little garden tours, so you weren't part of that.
Oh,
But-
I've been on the garden tours. I've been on the garden tours. Yeah. But no, I mean, and I wanted to mention, I mean, I think we're really lucky with the energy that BIFTA is developing right now. Again, you know, there's a momentum there. And I think if they were excited about doing something like this, we could help support that. I don't think we need to sort of start a front porch thing per se. I mean, is there a connection between Wyndham Windsor Housing and grant money available that if someone wanted to fix their porch as a thing, you know, there's a partnership there to leverage, because they have those very direct $5,000 grant kinds of things. Now, whether that would fit in with a renovation of something going on that we could help highlight and publicize more, I think that would be good. I mean, I think, you know, I'd almost like to review our group of people like a matrix on a board. I mean, there's a lot of great talent here and involvement. And are we, you know, kind of without stretching anyone out, leveraging that kind of energy and talent.
Gary.
And I'd sort of be interested also in maybe Paul and Sue speaking up, because they do regional work with their organizations, and are they working with other little volunteer groups of people in different communities, and what's their perspective on that from grant writing or grant support to a community becoming more successful, you know, if you're looking at other communities you work with and volunteer groups of people, the perspective you might have on that.
Yeah, so I was wondering if between the concepts brought up of the neighborhood tours, whether it's the porches, music, however that happens, if there's a way to tie it into like the Oswego thing of providing some funds to help with renovations. And there was some concept that I think Windsor, the Housing Trust shared about taking a neighborhood and walking through it. And Bellows Falls is kind of one, you know, a large neighborhood that has a lot of houses that could use a little attention. And the town has $45,000 remaining in a housing preservation fund, and have committed to working with Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust with their grants on these, and have done it with one owner. It seems like it's pretty easy to get the money out there. I wonder if it's possible to combine going through with porches to offering some funds. It has to be owner occupied, but you know, most of them, they're fixed incomes that are in there and easily qualify for the LMI. I mean, Paul could probably speak better to this, but I think you know, it's somewhere in the $50,000 range that for income that a housing owner could be making, 40,000, 50,000, and avail themselves for these. So just a thought, the funds are there, and it would be nice to be able to combine the community building energy we have with some of the funds that are available to get work done and houses fixed up.
Yeah, Robert, to your point, you know, as far as like, what is it that this specific group, like what would be the action item, you know, what would be the things that people in this group would have to do to like do some of these things, you know, around the Porch Fest or around, you know, I feel like this group could definitely be a sort of like the glue, if you will. So like maybe it wouldn't be RIDWG that like puts on the Porch Fest, but we would do the legwork in like getting all the different agencies in the downtown org and Wyndham Windsor and, you know, the town, and start bringing them all to the table to basically use their energy and use their, honestly, staff time to put something, you know, like this or something similar on. Paul.
I'm sorry, go on, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. The thing I thought was interesting about that Oswego project is that it didn't have it didn't have a lot of, it was about beautification, and it didn't have a lot of things, ribbons wrapped around it, so to speak, to make it look, you know. But so I think one of the issues that you know, a lot of the grant money and things like that, there's you know, like if you go to SEVCA, there's income levels that you need to deal with. If you go to other Efficiency Vermont, you know, there's really you know, there's all these different programs out there. You know, one of the things that we are trying to do is to try to pull some of that together. Is a big kind of group that here's some money that's available, but each one of them has you know, like its own eligibility criteria. And so one of the, you know, like the criteria for, as a matter of fact, somebody, I was just talking to emailing somebody today about a porch, but it's a porch that doesn't have a railing, and, you know, and so it's, so a lot of like the Rockingham grant, you know, a lot, you know, that the main thing with the funding on that is code violations and that sort of thing, you know. So it's not really strictly like about beautification. So I wonder if there is a way that you know, and the town grant, like Gary was saying, you know, I'm trying to, I did refer a couple of people. I know one that went for that, and so you had like the limit of has to be owner occupied, and I think it was up to 2 units or something that could, it couldn't be a multi-family, like a 4-unit thing.
It could be a 4-unit, 2 to 4
Oh, good.
unit.
Yeah, okay, so that, but, so the key was the owner occupied part. So I had a couple of people that I did. I know one that went through, and I'm working with her to sort of spend that money right now. And, you know, but what maybe there's a way that we could, in this group together, kind of come up with either, you know, try to find a grant, you know, that is specifically like that Oswego type of grant that is about beautification of a community, and, you know, some private funding somewhere. I know that currently the Rockingham program that we're working on right now, as it stands today, is sort of sundowning next year. The new fiscal year begins in July, and so after that it's kind of sundowning. But you know, one of the biggest problems is the you know, the contract labor and supply issues that people are having. But is there a way that this group, either as an advocate group or, you know, together we come up with an idea for a grant, and somebody can, you know, then we can do some research and figure out who might be the target for that grant, and maybe get a grant for Bellows Falls to do something similar to that Oswego thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I like the porch. I think that's a cool thing, those art walks and things like that. I mean, I used to go to them too, so, and still will if I see one around. But, so.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, I think also I was just thinking, you know, it would be great as a partner to work with the, well, it used to be called CLG, the Bellows Falls Historical.
Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Gary. I mean, they do the Painted Lady. Well, is there any reason they couldn't shift an emphasis to fixing up your porch and giving awards for the porch kind of thing? So that, you know, we kind of shift that, work with them about something that they might want to highlight, and that a building could actually, in the summer, then say, highlight your porch in the month of August. There'll be an award, and we could round up some entertainment that would happen in those, you know, and something, or the 8 that get awarded something, they get a little plaque and stuff. So, I mean, the resources of what people do already kind of exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what I'm just trying to keep us from doing is reinventing something that we have to organize and do and put together and administer. You know, that doesn't, we don't have the capacity for that. But there's enough if we look at the resources. Like, I keep forgetting the name of the grant that just came out from Richard Amore, you know, from the thing you're
Better
working
Places.
The Better
Thank you.
Places, that's what I was
Better
gonna mention.
Places, like, so great. So the town comes up with an idea about that with some things, and we support that idea. There's these gateways now, you know, if you fix that down by in front of Jennifer's, that crosswalk thing, or whatever the idea may be, we get behind supporting that, because I think anything that we help with the infrastructure in our community is going to eventually help attract more people to want to be in the community. So we might not start with the carriage houses, but we want to make the community together. There's energy here, there's things happening that then attracts those people that then come and do the work, you know, basically.
I'm putting together, as we're speaking, sort of a spreadsheet, if you will, because I think a lot of ideas have some good ideas have been thrown around, and what I would love would be to like have a list of all these things. So I'll share it. So I'll make it so that you can add stuff to it. And essentially I'm asking for like project title. If it's not a project yet, like just make it up. Like it doesn't have to be something that exists yet. A short description. You should identify what this group's role would be in that project. Other organizations that need to be involved, who should or would be the project lead. So sort of to Robert's point, like, you know, maybe RIDWG is not a project lead on anything, you know, our role would be to support, and it would be the town that's the project lead. And then just some other stuff about like estimated costs, if you know, that's a thing that you know or can guess at, and also potential like funding streams for it. And then a place for you to put your name so we know who wrote it. So I'll share that with you guys, but this might help sort of organize our ideas into some simple categories. Paul?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think that's probably makes a lot of sense, really, advocacy idea, but, and I saw earlier, John, I think it was John that made a comment about like putting out a QR about like why you come to Bellows Falls, like why are people here, you know?
Mhm.
And, you know, is there a way to reach out to the community, you know, and say, hey, do you have an idea, you know, like kind of give us a call, let us get behind you, you know? And sort of like, how can we, you know, how can we do that, you know, maybe even so that we get the community ideas out. There are a lot of people, like Jeff was saying. I mean, there was a great jazz band playing in the little coffee shop in downtown the other day, you know, in Bellows Falls, you know. So, I mean, there's tons of creative people and ideas in the area.
Yeah.
So I think that's, you know, maybe a great place to start, advocacy, you know.
Paul, I kind of think that in a way that's already being done, like the asking through the ARPA submission that the town is doing, asking for, so something RIDWG could do would be to look at that list of what people have submitted and see like what kind of fits in the mission and the belief of this group around incremental development, and then reaching out to those projects to say, hey, how can we support you? Yeah, it's a great idea, but I think it's already being done.
That's already somebody, yeah, there's a list already, great. Go.
Yeah, one
Get our
thing,
hands
less
on that
thing we don't
list
have to
and start
do.
looking, you know.
Emmett, and then Sue.
Yeah, I think that one of the coolest things that I've felt has been coming out of all these meetings is with this diverse group and all the experience that's here, it's really been identifying a lot of barriers and has been working on breaking some of those down. So in the idea of advocacy, there's also the idea of, and support, there's also the idea of continuing to identifying the barriers and using this multiple headed think tank to go through the difficult challenges of changing, reducing, or streamlining those barriers. Micro loans, zoning issues, the budding stuff, you know, whatever it is, having the resources, the answers to a lot of questions with new homeowners. If new homeowners in Bellows Falls are being encouraged to be new homeowners of duplexes and triplexes, they're not really new homeowners. They're now new homeowners slash landlords slash developers slash maintenance slash everything. So that's a lot, you know, when you ask someone to take on a property. Now we know, because that's what we all kind of related to and understand, that it makes a lot of sense eventually, and it's economically viable and all those things, but it's really daunting too. So I think that the work that's been being done is incredible. And I think that our project should be to identify, break down, and streamline barriers while also giving the resources to the financial demand or the financial resources to then accomplish what you want to do. I've been talking a lot about microloans in Bellows Falls ever since I've been there. Revolving loan fund is fantastic, but it's not as much of a microloan as it was. It was a lot to manage, and the minimum went up. It was whatever you want, maybe $1,000, and I think now it's 5,000. So, you know, that's an example where it made sense for that to be larger loans with less administration. But also, is there a place for there to be some kind of micro loan opportunity? And then lastly, working with the development office, really having that building property catalog, identifying empty square footage, and really then reaching out on the reverse barrier and find the barrier where we need to find the people to take on specific spaces. As opposed to people coming to us with the space they want to develop, why don't we take the space that needs to be developed and find some people to develop it, particularly the second, third, fourth story of downtown or some other unusual properties. So I think that removing barriers, removing mystery, streamlining work, connecting, just like, I'm the farmer guy, so I'm basically thinking about the farm link. You're trying to link farmers with land and land with farmers. Do the same thing with empty square footage in Bellows Falls with potential new developers. A beginning farmer is a farmer for 10 years. You could say a beginning developer is probably 5 years.
Great. That's great, Emmett. Yeah, I think that's really much, that is very in line with sort of what InkDev's kind of sole purpose is, when coming in and providing technical assistance to municipalities, is like identifying those barriers that is making development difficult, and how do you reduce those barriers or get rid of them. So I think that is sort of very much on point with sort of how this group got started. What else? It's 4:51. Just want to keep, Sue, yeah, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say quickly, I think there have been a lot of great ideas shared, and I hope that the town is looking at the Better Places grant program, because I think there's a lot of potential there. But I also wanted to put a plug in for the area-wide plan. And although those are a lot of larger concepts, there are some smaller ideas in there, particularly off the top of my head surrounding the canal, making it more of a place. And I'm wondering if maybe at an upcoming meeting, I don't think a final document has been completed, but it's on its way. Maybe Gary could present that to the group, and we could talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think Gary had also mentioned that to me in
Excellent.
some email chain about and sort of along the lines of what Robert was saying, what's already happening. What are some of the ideas that have already been generated, and how can this group get behind and push up.
Excellent.
So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Sounds like we're on the same page.
Anything else? I think so. Coming out of this meeting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the spreadsheet. So as you think of ideas, I've been putting some of the ideas we've been talking about, but I would love if you were the person that mentioned it, if you could just go in and fill out some of the different columns. I'll also share the recording for those people who weren't here, and then hopefully they can watch that and fill it out. And I guess my question is what should we address at the next meeting at the end of March? What feels like a good next step to feel like we're moving in a direction, hopefully forward? Yeah, Robert.
Well, do you think it might be good to then review this spreadsheet?
Mm-hmm.
And I think also maybe bring to the table, I mean, we didn't really get around to updates about different things that are on our radar screen and going on. I mean, I would be happy to talk to, CLG and say, would you ever think about doing something that might emphasize the porches, and then talking back to Pat and stuff, saying, if we did get something like that, would it be a big effort to sort of organize some events that might happen around some? I mean, what would that event look like without it being a huge effort to do, that things were in place to do it? I also wanted to ask, it seemed like at some point, Gary, was there ever some thought about somehow developing kind of neighborhood identities? Or did I just sort of make that up in my brain? I mean, I know it's beyond what the downtown group can do. They're in a geographic area. But I think the next natural step would be, are there natural neighborhood areas in Bellows Falls that, we might create some identity around, or the front porch thing around, and maybe that's talking to the historical society, if there's a history of something around that might be interesting to kind of generate where then the neighborhood people really kind of feel very involved in their neighborhood, whether it's block parties or yard sales that would happen or something. But, we wouldn't have to organize a huge amount, but we could sort of inject some little thought of energy or fairy dust that would make it all happen.
The original front porch series, the idea behind it was to have a block party and I stationed them in various neighborhoods. So I'd have
Right,
one concert on Atkinson Street, and then I'd have another one on Green Street,
right,
and
right.
another one on one of the other streets, Hapgood or whatever, so that we were moving people around into different neighborhoods.
Right. And the idea of resuscitating the garden tour concept, it doesn't have to be a huge fundraiser for anything, but it could be an
Mm.
event where if there were gardens in each of the neighborhoods, and it was just sort of like, well, this Saturday they're going to be open, come, you know, and yes, it might cost $5, but we're not trying to make it a huge fundraiser to raise anything. It's just an opportunity to walk into your own neighborhood and see that garden, or come from outside the community or from another neighborhood.
Mhm.
Just like, you know, sort of a simple PR event, but it's not about raising a bunch of money.
Love it. Dwayne.
Just, I was going to mention a couple of things
Please.
as regarding those individual neighborhoods within Bellows Falls. That is something that was thrown around a little bit during the Incremental Development Alliance visit. They sort of made a half-hearted effort, I guess, but brought open the idea that there might be several natural neighborhoods within the town, just sort of the way the streets are laid out and the way the topography works, and the kinds of structures that are already there. So that idea is already sort of in the atmosphere a little bit. That could be expanded. Also, Sustainable Rockingham, one of the 3 groups that came out of the rural development meetings a couple of years ago, has also been working on sort of looking for naturally occurring neighborhoods within the town, and finding a leader in each one to kind of reach out to the other members of that community. And so there have been a couple of successful meets already, one out in Saxton's River and one up in a neighborhood that's sort of up the hill just behind the elementary school here in town. And so Sustainable Rockingham might have some insights, having gone through that experience, as to how you work to get people together to do a few events.
That's great. Yeah, I think I remember Sky Peebles talking about that at one of the earlier
Yes,
meetings,
been
right?
involved with that. Yep.
Yeah. Which I think, you know, sort of having that identity around, like, we're this neighborhood or that neighborhood, really kind of, it brings people together, you know, to sort of get some forward momentum for whatever it is they want to do in the neighborhood. But having that network and that framework already established, I think could be really useful to this group. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Tony.
Just a 30-second remark. Let's
Yeah.
bring together some projects that we know are going on to the next meeting to discuss and see if we can help amplify those or give them support.
Great, I love that. I've heard Hetty Green, I've heard the Old Terrace places. Are those 2 we want to hear from? And is there a third that might be of interest to the group?
I think if the town's working on this, I can never remember the name of it. It just
Better Places.
Thank you. I don't know why
The island.
and all that.
It's such a simple, it's such like a simple nondescript.
Any kind of update going on around that, Gary, that we could be helpful with, or the direction it might be moving in or something. I think that's a great plan, because I think that's going to be a repetitive kind of grant thing. So it's the perfect thing to set up, like, let's look at a big picture and say, if we wanted to phase 4 projects over the next 4 years, here's phase 1 we're doing this year. Next year you go back and say phase 2 will be this, and we completed phase 1. You know, so if it is a grant that the state will replenish, I think we should have a big vision about it, and then you know, nick away at it year by year with different projects. We have gateways to our downtown, or whatever it could be. It could be neighborhoods, identifying the neighborhood thing. It could, you know. But yeah, I think that's a very exciting opportunity. What's that?
Recurring revenue is the secret.
Exactly. We don't know how long it's going to be here, you know,
Right.
all taken up by oil prices soon.
Right.
Not going to be getting caviar anymore.
No.
Hey, Robert, would you be willing to try and get Chris Proctor to attend our next meeting?
Sure, yeah, I'll see if I can get a response out of it. You know, like I said, I emailed him, I
Yeah.
didn't hear anything, but
Yeah,
sure.
just let us
or-
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, and then Tony, do you have a relationship with the Hetty Green people?
Sort of, and I can make an overture there.
Yeah, that would be great if you could reach out and ask if they'd be willing to come tell us what's going on with their project. And that, just for everyone's calendar, that's March 30th would be the date of the next meeting. Emmett, then Dwayne, and then I just want to bring us to a close since it is after 5.
Yeah, I actually just have a question.
Yeah.
That is, are we only doing Bellows Falls, or are we doing other areas? Specifically, the fact that the Main Street Arts is going to be taking down that building that's right next to theirs, and you know, what's going to happen with that, and whatever does happen with that. This is definitely a really important group to be aware of that, and to help with that development in Rockingham. And I've always been one to be outside the fishbowl and say that Rockingham is Rockingham. And did you know that the main street in Bellows Falls is called Rockingham Street?
That's because you go to Rockingham.
No, I think that's a good point. And Saxton's River has sort of come up in conversation here and there. So I think I would rather err on the side of like not excluding cool projects. So I think, yeah, I think if it's within the bounds of Rockingham, you know, if the group feels that's appropriate, you know, I think that, you know, we shouldn't reduce it just to Bellows Falls. I think it just happens that most of us here have some tie to Bellows Falls specifically. So, but yeah, I think open to anything inside the town boundaries.
Bellows Falls is a good focus. It really
Yes.
helps the whole group.
Yes.
Because that project has so much potential for
Right.
housing. Who knows
Right.
what?
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
I'm willing to say we go so far as cross the river.
Yeah.
How's the river?
Oh,
man?
boy.
Let's
Now
go.
you done it.
We're going
All
over
right.
the river.
Robert, we're voting you
taking
off
it
the
back.
island. We're
We're
voting you off
taking
the
it
island.
But I want to also say thank you, Sarah, for like
Yeah.
sticking with us. I mean, you really play a really important role, you know,
Thanks.
and I think there's just a benefit to us coming together and talking like this, you know, even, I
Totally.
mean, I hope people don't feel it's a waste of time and, oh my God, we're not doing anything. But I think this actual discussion and awareness of things is really, really important, you know.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's probably the best part of my month.
Oh, we could have 2 meetings a month.
Okay, well, now you're pushing it.
Double the pleasure, double
yeah.
the fun, doublemint, come.
Oh man, you're too much.
I am too
Dwayne,
much.
Dwayne, I just wanted to give you, I know you had your hand raised.
Oh, thanks. I
Yeah.
want to thank Emmett for pointing that out. I did not know about that, about Saxon's River, and I think that's definitely something that this group could look, absolutely. You had mentioned a few minutes back about possible projects for next month. I've been working with a young couple in Bellows Falls who recently, a couple of years ago, bought a twofer, one of the old houses that's been 2 apartments for years and years and years. And they've been really working hard to do it up. And there's been a huge push recently to get it ready for an Afghan family to move in.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully last week, but we're still, you know, weeks and weeks away from having the apartment really done. And I just happened to mention it to this fellow when I was over there this morning, that I was part of this group, and that at some point when his job was all done, I'd like to kind of sit down and talk to him about what some of his experiences were with the regulations and the financing and the inspectors and that sort of, well, he just started talking. I mean, I was like, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this in the summer when you have time. But all this stuff just started pouring out. So I didn't know if maybe if I touched base with him at some point, I could like sit down and talk with him for 15 or 20 minutes and just write up a little report that I might be able to give. I mean, I can see if he wants to come. I
Yeah.
suspect, you know, with this building project and a job and a young family, you know, he's probably not going to have a lot of time to sit on a Zoom meeting at 3:30 in the afternoon. But anyway, if that sounds
Yeah.
like something that might be of interest to you all, maybe I'll see if I can pursue that a little.
Yeah,
That's all.
Dwayne, I think that's great. And yeah, if he's willing to come and just share with us, great. But also if you can just gather some information and provide it to us, that works as well. So Robert, you're gonna reach out to Chris Proctor, Tony, you're gonna try and get a hold of the Hetty Green people, and Dwayne, see if your contact can either attend, or at least you can give us a little synopsis of the project.
Okay.
And then I will send out this spreadsheet. So please, you know, as you think of them, add it, and so we can review it at the next meeting. And I think that's it.
Say that date again for the next meeting.
March 30th. It's always the last Wednesday of the month.
Good.
So
Great.
that's like the last day almost. Is it? Almost the last day of March. And it'll be in the email that I'm sending out post haste.
Quam Chilleri May.
Good to see
Don't
you
bust
all.
the gut getting it quick. Make it right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone. So good to see you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.